Greetings and happy Wednesday. Happy Wednesday to one and to all. Prayerfully, everyone is having a good day. And for those listeners from abroad, happy Thursday. Many of you, I'm sure by now, have heard the story, the very sad and tragic story of 36-year-old Sonya Massey, who lost her life in her home when she called 911 for help because she thought a prowler was outside. Recently, footage of the circumstances that resulted in her life being lost was shared. I listened to the audio. Honestly, not all of it. I am extremely squeamish when it comes to matters such as these. So this is going to be my commentary on a different angle. First, I would like to say to Miss Massey, may you rest in peace, and my deepest heartfelt condolences to her children, family, friends, and loved ones. My focus is going to be on Sean Grayson, the deputy who has been charged with taking Miss Massey's life. Now, the circumstances behind this entire situation to me appear to be strange, and because I was not there, I cannot speak to the credibility of anything. I say that because, and I want to be clear with this, there are so many ways to manipulate things. I'll just put it that way. And I am not saying, nor am I implying that there has been any manipulation. I am pointing out that it has occurred in the past. So again, I was not there. So I cannot speak to what occurred prior to the phone call made by Miss Massey. I cannot, I this is difficult. I cannot speak to the conversations or conversation that may have transpired between the officers who arrived at the residence of Sonya Massey. I can say that from what I've read, and by now, those of you that have listened to me will know that I will always implore you to do your research, fact check, cross check, and that's going to be an important talking point within my commentary. Fact checking. From what I've gathered, there was a pot, a boiling pot, full. An officer removed it. There was a statement, alleged statement made by Miss Sonya Massey. I rebuke you in the name of Jesus. Many of us have heard that statement. Many of us used that for many reasons. And from my understanding, from all that I read, she apologized for making that statement. And as she began to stand up, because it appears that she may have stood behind or stood down the counter, that's when the tragedy occurred. It's graphic. And again, you can read the story, you can watch the footage. No matter how anyone looks at this, it is tragic. I'm going to say this, and I want to be clear on this as well, because I don't, and I will not participate in race baiting or pulling a race card. So let me be clear on that. There are some comments, and with any situation that occurs, there are people that will do that. Sonya Massey, 36 years old, Black female. Sean Grayson, 30 years old, white male. So you have that information. Now, the angle I'm taking is Sean Grayson, Deputy Grayson, former Deputy Grayson, because he was fired. Sean Grayson, again, Deputy, former Deputy. Sean Grayson may have been the direct cause of the life of Sonya Massey being cut short at 36 years old. But in my opinion, there are many culpable parties that should also be held accountable. Police officers, law enforcement. The old adage says, are to protect and serve. And when I was growing up, and for many of you, police officers were lauded leaders of the community. I can remember as a youngster, when we would have orientations and assemblies where we speak about what we wanted to be when we grew up. Most children would say doctors, lawyers, but many little girls too, police officers. However, as I started to get older and understand people, I learned about not only the good police officers, but the bad police officers. Bad police officers, as far as it relates to corruption, brutality, fraud, coercion, SA, and the largest, abuse of authority. And I've always said this, and this is no disrespect to anyone in any position of power. A title does not hold merit if your actions and behaviors do not match. I've also said I would never speak on things that I personally had no knowledge of. So my commentary is based on what I know beyond the shadow of a doubt. When you are hired or considered to be hired for a position of public trust, you undergo background checks, investigations for behavior, character, financial stability. All of those are to identify any red flags that would prevent problematic individuals. Many of these background checks are done by state and often contractors. I was an OPM background investigator, and I investigated federal employees, federal employee candidates, members of the military, you name it, I have investigated. Some of the main red flags that had to be investigated further were financial status. And the premise behind that is to ensure that one would not be vulnerable to trade national security secrets with others for financial gain. Now, that may sound silly or far fetched to some of you, but that's absolutely the truth. And any of you that have undergone an investigation would know this. Next, mental health. One of the questions, have you or are you seeking assistance, guidance from a mental health professional? Now, keep in mind, and this is why not only what's reported on these background investigation forms, the interview, the actual face-to-face interview is also very important, because those that check yes, there could be mitigating circumstances. Those circumstances being loss of a loved one. Many people experience and process grief differently. Some may not need the assistance of counseling, others may. Because of the stigma, unfortunately, some people hide that. But for those that do, that's also a red flag. But as I just mentioned, there are mitigating circumstances. Divorce is another mitigating circumstance. Not only are you dealing with the breakup of your family, you may have children, young children involved, and that dynamic there will often lead one to seek guidance from a mental health professional. Those are the two main questions that are looked at. There are others, but those are the main ones. Criminal backgrounds. I don't believe I need to say if that will disqualify anyone or not. Most of my listeners are critical thinkers, so you should know the answer to that. And to piggyback off of that, anyone that has DV or domestic violence on their backgrounds, if not already, that is a major disqualifier. And some will attest to losing employment because of that. Sean Grayson reportedly was with the U.S. Army in Fort Riley, Arkansas. I'm sorry, Kansas. When he was discharged for serious misconduct. Serious misconduct. Records have been requested, and they may have been obtained already. I am unsure, but I'm very, very interested in knowing what that serious misconduct could have been that led to him being discharged from the United States Army in the year of 2016. Next, we have information reported that Sean Grayson held six police-related jobs in 4 years. According to reports on a couple of applications, and that information is being gathered as well, his employment applications. When the question was asked, why did you leave? Other was his response, and resigned was one of the responses. My question, and I have several, for the hiring agencies, for the selecting official, for the panel that interviewed, if there was an interview conducted, was that question asked? And if that question was asked, as far as previous employment, did Sean Grayson elaborate on what other meant and why he resigned? Did the hiring agencies fact check? And I mentioned that earlier. Did they indeed substantiate all of the answers provided with calls and visits to those named on the employment applications? I'm going to go back to what I know. And these investigations, when they're looking at your character and your behavior, they will go to your former places of employment. They will go to your neighbors. So if you've been a you-know-what in your neighborhood causing problems, and your neighbors remember that, that's going to be recorded and reported. Now, if it's something minor, we get that. We get that. But if it's major, and if there are records of the police being called to your residence or a neighbor's residence because of you several times, That's a major red flag. There have been reports, and again, in my eyes, until I actually see them, I am going to say allegations of DUIs and possible marijuana. How did Sean Grayson become a deputy? What type of training did Sean Grayson undergo other than tactical? In this particular case with Sonya Massey, and again, I'm going to be clear, I wasn't there, but from reports, she was in night clothes. From reports, there may have been some mental health issues. Again, I am unsure and unclear of that. But please know there are many people that suffer with mental health issues, ranging from mild to severe, that should not be the determining factor of whether you live or not. And what, if anything, it's just a question, made Sean Grayson be in so much fear that caused him to take the life the way it was taken of Sonya Massey. The Illinois State Police conducted a review that found that Sean Grayson was not, I repeat, was not justified in his use of deadly force. And I would ask you all to review deadly force, what it entails. Ben Crump, and I'm going to say this, and there are people who may get upset with me. I get it, but I am not a fan of Ben Crump. I applaud his efforts for civil rights, but for me, it just seems as though he and Reverend Al Sharpton will pop up in cases such as this. And when I say such as this, because it is extremely tragic, but another factor is it's viral. Now, am I saying that he only shows up in these types of high profile cases? No, his office represents many cases, but he is known to be the face behind many high profile cases. One being George Floyd. I believe many of us remember that. Until this day, I have not watched that in its entirety. I tried to walk by when it was on and obviously didn't get past the TV fast enough and accidentally, and I say accidentally because I again, I'm squeamish. When I heard him say "mama," I almost lost it. So I had to get out of that room, and I waited and waited and waited and waited until I thought that portion had been completed. But then Crump, and I haven't seen Al Sharpton pop up yet. He may not. Sean Grayson has already pleaded not guilty to the charges. So we know there's going to be a fight. Whatever damages the family of Sonya Massey may be awarded, and I'm sure after everything is complete, there will be an award. After all of the marches, after all of the vigils, that's still not going to bring her back. Her family, friends, and loved ones will be left with that gaping hole for the rest of their lives. Which brings me to our politicians, our lawmakers. What is it going to take how many lives need to be destroyed before there's an overhaul or reinventing the wheel of background checks? Those with whom are given badges and weapons. How long are you going to quickly hire individuals without thorough background checks? Because you're short of manpower. And you may be tired of citizens holding town hall meetings or protesting in front of police stations, demanding something be done. Hiring any Joe Blow off the street is a terrible band-aid to fix a nationwide problem. Background investigations are extremely expensive. And that's another thing people may not understand. Those that know, you know. But background investigations are expensive. They're time consuming. So there is no way that anyone can convince me a thorough background investigation was conducted on Sean Grayson. I would be curious to know if, again, I am not saying this to be true, nor am I implying it, just thinking out loud. But I would be curious to know if any family members worked at any of his previous places of employment, or if he may have known someone. Ladies and gentlemen, let's not act like that does not happen. Someone knows someone. Nepotism, it happens, it's real. But as I said, from 2016, allegations of serious misconduct, which led to him being discharged from the United States Army, where he was serving at Fort Riley. Again, that information has been requested. I don't know if it's been received as of yet, but I'm sure when it is, someone will report on it. And the mere fact that he allegedly has held 6 jobs, police-related jobs, in 4 years, didn't raise one eyebrow enough to go back and ask simple questions or review files. Police officers, members of law enforcement, are to protect and serve. And many people rely on those services. Unfortunately, police officers that are corrupt put an ugly stain on those good, solid police officers who put their lives on the line each day they leave their homes and their families. Again, there are many politicians raising funds for their campaigns. And certain questions are going to be on ballots. I'm wondering if one of those questions will be reviewing background checks for law enforcement personnel. Sean Grayson is not the only guilty party here. In my opinion, those with knowledge of these allegations, and I'm sure, well, it's hard for me to believe that nobody was privy to anything. There are so many, I'm not going to say too much, but there are so many automated systems. You cannot convince me, you will not convince me unless Sean Grayson covered his tracks thoroughly, that none of this, I'm speaking of these allegations, were questioned, as I said, by the agencies and the hiring official. Usually, on the most basic job application, they ask you for references. I would be curious to see those. As I said, it is my belief that many are responsible for the passing of 36-year-old Sonya Massey. And unfortunately, there are others that are not high profile, that we've lost or may lose due to the negligence of those conducting or failing to conduct thorough and honest background checks. If anything has been a red flag. There's a process called adjudication, and that's where a second reviewer should look at everything that's been gathered with a fresh pair of eyes and fact check before granting or denying. Rest in peace, Sonya Massey, and to all. To everyone that has lost a loved one, by the negligence of those who, as I mentioned earlier, award these individuals who should not be in these positions, with positions, with the badges, with the weapons that ultimately can and have destroyed the lives of many.